Welcome to our channel, Law Logical, where we explain complex legal concepts in a way that everyone can understand. Today, we're embarking on an insightful journey into the realm of Indian family law, specifically focusing on a topic that's often overlooked: domestic violence against men. In a society where the traditional image of a victim of domestic abuse is usually a woman, it may be surprising for some to learn that men can and do fall prey to such violence. Our discussion today aims to shed light on this issue, exploring the intricacies of the law and how it addresses and protects men who are victims of domestic violence. We'll be navigating through the labyrinth of legalities, highlighting key laws and discussing landmark judgments that have shaped the discourse around this topic. So buckle up, because this isn't just about law. It's about societal norms, prejudice, and the quest for justice. In the next few minutes, we will delve deep into this subject, dispelling myths and bringing facts to light. Before we discuss the legal aspect, it's crucial to understand what domestic violence is. Often, when we hear the term domestic violence, we instinctively think of physical abuse. However, it is much more than just physical harm. It's a pattern of behaviors used by one partner to maintain power and control over another partner in an intimate relationship. It can happen to anyone regardless of their gender, age, socioeconomic status, or cultural background. Domestic violence takes many forms, and it's essential to recognize them all. First, there's physical abuse, which is perhaps the most recognized form. It involves any act of violence causing harm or fear, such as hitting, slapping, choking, or even withholding medical care or necessary rest. Next, we have emotional abuse, a less visible but equally damaging form of domestic violence. This involves undermining a person's sense of self-worth through constant criticism, belittling, name-calling, or other damaging interactions. Emotional abuse can be just as damaging as physical violence, leading to depression, anxiety, and other psychological trauma. Then, there's financial abuse, which is often overlooked but can be just as controlling and damaging. This occurs when one partner has control over the other's access to economic resources, diminishing the victim's capacity to support themselves and forcing them to depend on the perpetrator financially. Sexual abuse, isolation, intimidation, and a variety of other behaviors can also fall under the umbrella of domestic violence. Essentially, if it involves one person systematically controlling another through fear, it's domestic violence. Finally, it's important to note that domestic violence is not always continuous. It often follows a cycle where periods of violence are followed by phases of reconciliation or apparent normalcy, which can make it even more difficult for victims to break free. Now that we understand what domestic violence is, let's move on to how the Indian family law addresses this issue. The Indian family law has provisions that protect individuals from domestic violence, including men. A common misconception is that only women can be victims of domestic violence, and the Protection of Women from Domestic Violence Act, 2005, seems to reinforce this notion. However, it's crucial to understand that the name of the act reflects the societal context in which it was conceived, not an exclusion of male victims. The act was primarily designed to protect women, who are statistically more likely to be victims of domestic violence. However, over the years, the interpretation of this act has evolved. The courts, recognizing that men can also be victims, have extended its protection to them in certain cases. For instance, in cases of emotional or economic abuse, the courts have not hesitated to recognize male victims. This progressive interpretation of the law shows that the legal system is well aware of the changing dynamics of society and is ready to protect all victims, regardless of their gender. In addition to the Protection of Women from Domestic Violence Act, male victims can also seek refuge under the provisions of the Indian Penal Code. Various sections of the IPC, such as those dealing with assault, criminal intimidation, and cruelty, can be used by men to seek justice. It's also worth noting that several non-governmental organizations and legal aid services are working tirelessly to ensure that male victims of domestic violence receive the help they need. These organizations provide counseling, legal advice, and support to men who may be suffering in silence. So, while it might seem that the laws are skewed, the reality is that they are there to protect victims, irrespective of their gender. The Indian legal system acknowledges that domestic violence is not a women's issue, but a human issue. And while there's still a long way to go in ensuring equal protection for all, the steps taken so far are reassuring. Through understanding and empathy, we can help break the silence and stigma surrounding male victims of domestic violence, ensuring that everyone has access to the protection and justice they deserve. Several court judgments have set precedents for men seeking justice against domestic violence. We'll now delve into a few case studies that have played a pivotal role in shaping the legal landscape. One such case that grabbed headlines was that of a man from Kolkata in 2016. He was subjected to psychological abuse by his wife and in-laws for over 5 years. The man, feeling cornered and helpless, approached the court, which ruled in his favor, acknowledging the mental harassment he had endured. This case was a wake-up call, highlighting that men too can be victims of domestic abuse. In another landmark case in 2018, the Delhi High Court ruled that a man suffering from domestic violence at the hands of his wife has the right to seek relief. The court held that the term aggrieved person in the Domestic Violence Act is not gender-specific, and it includes not only women but also men who are victims of any form of violence within the domestic setting. Let's also recall the case from Mumbai in 2020, where a man faced severe emotional and financial abuse from his wife. The court recognized the torment he underwent, granting him a divorce and providing him with a protection order. This judgment reiterated the fact that domestic violence extends beyond physical abuse, encompassing emotional and financial aspects as well. These cases, along with others, have broadened our understanding of domestic violence, emphasizing that it's not confined to one gender. The courts have shown us that the law is not a respecter of persons, but a respecter of rights, regardless of one's gender. Each of these rulings has chipped away at the societal stereotype that men cannot be victims of domestic violence. By setting these legal precedents, the courts have sent a clear message. Domestic violence is a human issue, not a gender issue. These cases underline the fact that domestic violence is not a gender-specific issue and that the law is there to protect all victims. To conclude, the Indian family law does acknowledge that men can be victims of domestic violence. We've traversed an enlightening journey through this complex topic today, dissecting and understanding key aspects of domestic violence, its application in Indian family law, and the significant role it plays in the lives of many. We began by familiarizing ourselves with the concept of domestic violence, a social issue that has long been shrouded in misconceptions. We unraveled the truth that domestic violence is not gender-specific, that it transcends all boundaries, affecting both women and men. We then dove into the intricacies of Indian family law, specifically the Protection of Women from Domestic Violence Act of 2005. While the title may suggest a gender-specific focus, we discovered that the law does not exclude men. It acknowledges the possibility of men being victims and provides legal remedies for their protection. Next, we walked through real-life case studies and court judgments, shedding light on how the law has been interpreted and applied in various circumstances. These cases underscored the reality that men can and do fall victim to domestic violence, further emphasizing the need for recognition and assistance for such victims. The crux of our discussion today has been to highlight the importance of not viewing domestic violence as a gender-specific issue. It's an issue that affects society as a whole and requires our collective attention and action. If you or someone you know is a victim, regardless of gender, remember that there is help available. Seek assistance and know that you are not alone in this battle. Thank you for joining us today on Law Logical. If you found this video informative, please like and share it and inspire others too to subscribe to our channel. Stay tuned for more such enlightening discussions.